So let's start with the one, right? Let's start with Lincoln Riley. I got to spend some time with him yesterday. I want to fill you guys in on that. And you'd love it, Ted. I thought of you and Michael and Jill Savage, of course. When I walked into the Coliseum, the first guy I saw, Alex Grinch, right? And of course, we've all kind of come to love him. And he was rumored he was coming, didn't really know. And he pulls up on the golf cart. We had, our embrace and what's up and catching up, and he's fired up. Right, so that name, of course, is known in this league. He'll be the defensive coordinator at SC. They bring their strength coach. They bring in a wide receiver coach, Dennis Simmons, who was a Leach guy and then was at Wazoo, and then, of course, went over to Oklahoma. And they bring a director of football operations as well. But overall, I'll say this. USC, if we're going to be truth tellers on this, over the last handful of years with Lane, Sark, and Clay, it never seemed smooth. Right? There was always drama. There was always something going on. And from the presentation of the head coach overlooking the Coliseum at the stadium, there was media members, there was donors, there were some big alums, Mark Sanchez, Matt Liner, but it was just clean. And then you look at the search and they detailed it. It was clean. You didn't hear rumors. There weren't leaks. It was Mike Bone and Brandon Sosna, his chief of staff. Those two went after it, and they had 2.5 months to do background checks, to talk to people in the industry. And even for Lincoln Riley, he said he never even thought about it. And then he got a call from his team Saturday after his game. Saturday night, he had a call with USC representatives. And by Sunday morning, I talked to Bruce Feldman because he tweeted out there's interest. And I said, Bruce, you don't put stuff out there unless it's real. And he goes, Yogi, I think it's going to happen. And 3 hours later, it happened. So Michael talked about this swiftness. This was super swift. And Lincoln Riley saying, wow, I got a great situation. I'm a top 10 program every year, top 4 program a lot of the times, but I see the opportunity out west. And man, I just think right now in this time and space with college football and NIL and LA and the Pac-12 and SC, I think he's going to crush it.
Well, here's the other thing I would say, because all these things I think are connected. Yogi, I'm really happy to hear you say that. And I want to ask you one question in a second, but there are connections to everything. Oklahoma's going eventually going to end up in the SEC. And we've talked about this on the pod this year, and I'm sure the other pods on our network have all said the same thing. Look, Oklahoma and Texas don't go unless they believe the CFP is going to be a much bigger field, whatever that number is. There's no way they're going to the SEC if it's a 4-team playoff. No shot. Lincoln Riley may look at that landscape and think, okay, SEC, we understand what that league's going to be, or I can think of 2 words that would attract me to USC. Pete Carroll.
Yeah.
What did Pete Carroll do? Pete Carroll made himself a coaching legacy. His coaching legacy is not really going to be the Seattle Seahawks. I don't think it's going to be USC. What he did at USC, one of the country's most storied programs. When Pete took over USC football, it was pretty much similar, I think, to where it is today. So Lincoln Riley can do what Pete Carroll did. And no matter what you do at Oklahoma, you will never be in that same level if you can achieve that at USC.
Yeah. Michael, I'm curious, when you heard that thing come across your phone and then have subsequently, obviously watched his presser, et cetera, what do you think about Lincoln and the move?
Well, I think that what jumped out at me is he decided not to go to an SEC school. He decided not to stay at a school that was going to be in the SEC, and he chose USC instead. And the first thing that jumped out at me is, how are Feinbaum and company going to spin this to somehow being negative for the Pac-12? Yeah. So yeah. I guess cynicism was the first thing that jumped into my head, but not about Lincoln, just about how it was going to be spun. But I don't think you could spin it any other way than somebody feels the USC job is better than 2 SEC jobs. I don't know how else you can spin it. So I'm sure it will be spun, but that's the first thing I thought about. And then I was, it just felt like, wow, this is the first time in a while the Pac-12 hasn't been rated by somebody, but rather we've brought somebody in that was coveted. And I think that's a long time coming. So I'm glad the USC administration got it done.
Yeah, good point there. And boy, Michael, you've really hung around me too long. You start being cynical.
Let me say this in response to that. Number one, I believe this, and Lincoln kind of referenced it yesterday, but what he did at Oklahoma, he came in as a young OC at 32 years old and obviously did extremely well. And then he gets the job. We all remember that. I remember I was in New York City walking around and it came across my phone that Bob Stoops was retiring. This was like after spring ball. This was like May. And you're thinking, whoa, this is nuts. Who's this head coach at Oklahoma? And my point is that he learned from a guy that's going to be a Hall of Famer in college football. And then he took it and put his own twist on it. But now he comes to SC and he gets to build it. And it's not from the ground up, because I don't think SC starts on the ground. Like, it's elevated because of its history, and like SC still does recruit itself to a degree. But he's starting at the lowest point it's been in a while, to Ted's point. They had 25,000 people in the stands-ish in the UCLA and BYU game, and BYU is probably more BYU fans than SC fans. That stadium should not have 25,000 people in it for anything other than maybe the spring game. Maybe, right? So with that, I think he's just motivated. That's what came across yesterday. I get an opportunity to build this thing with all the resources. They're going to improve facilities. They're going to give him all the things that he needs from a staffing standpoint. You know that. We knew that already because that's what they gave Clay Helton. They went from like mid-20s to mid-40s over the last 2 years on their staff. And then I think the reality, and whether it's the mouth of the South or other people around the country that want to say, well, he was scared of that league. That league is living in a world of its own. That's just what it is. They became a super conference. They have their deal, their TV deal. Everything is within their own playground. Cool, go get it. And you'll kick out however many teams that get invited to the CFP every year. But I don't think you have the ability to be special there, right? At least right now. Like, Saban has been an icon over it's a decade now or so at Alabama. Name another school that has kind of been that. You can't say it about Georgia yet. They're super competitive. You'll say the same thing about all the teams in that league. Super competitive. At SC, you get to be kind of what Oklahoma was in the Big 12 to a degree, except you do it in LA. And he referenced it yesterday. He gets to recruit his backyard. Oklahoma, you gotta go. You gotta get on a plane. He's gonna get in his car and drive down the 405. He's gonna drive up the 101. He's gonna drive, east into the valley. Like, I just think that the opportunity, when you take away even us working for the Pac-12, and you look at it and you say, blue blood, okay, there's a couple of those that are available, but who are we competing against necessarily? This is the premier school historically, and it's a really cool time in the league with media rights, with a new commissioner. I mean, it's kind of all perfect in terms of how it netted out to bring in a 38-year-old who will be here as long as he wants, call it 6, 8, 10 years, and then go to his next thing, because that's the industry. And I think he's going to have a chance, as you referenced, Pete, to do something similar to him.
Yeah. Hey, Yog, all right. Offense. We know Grinch is coming in for defense. Lincoln Riley, Graham Harrell. There's a prior hook there. What do you sense on the offense?
I'm excited. And so you guys know this, but our listeners don't. I spent the offseason studying Oklahoma's run game. So I wanted to see, like, okay, here's air raid tree, but man, they run it so well. What do they do? Yeah. And we did it in our game. They move their old linemen around, right? So whether they're pulling them or just doing different creative things and make it really challenging for defenses just to get after the quarterback. Because what has happened to air raid quarterbacks, Ted? We've
get
seen
crushed.
It forever. Exactly. They get crushed. Doesn't really happen under Lincoln Riley, right? They've been protected well for the most. So this year was a little more challenging. They had some holes. But overall, again, to the air raid, the number one line is that it's a philosophy, not necessarily a scheme. So everybody's got their own twist to it. So I think, yeah, they're going to deal. They're going to throw it around. But when you go watch Oklahoma play, you don't feel like they're running Leach's offense if you put them side by side.
See, and Yogi, that's the point. And we did this pod about the air raid in the offseason, and that was really where I was coming from, was the Leach air raid, which to me was what USC ran last year. And I went crazy, as we've talked about, watching the champ game last year, and they just didn't do anything to adjust to try to stop Thibodeau. And he was just screaming at the TV watching this. So my point is, you just said that about Oklahoma. And the point that I've heard repeatedly from NFL people is what Kingsbury has done in Arizona with the Cardinals, is that, yeah, you're running air raid, but you're understanding, okay, I need to use bigger bodies once in a while. I need to have a tight end or H-back on the field once in a while to double, to chip. And yeah, guess what? We're going to run something. And those are the things that USC, to me, as we saw the season go along this year, we started to see some of that get incorporated. But that's the root of my question to you, is where does Riley in your view, where do you see Riley taking the USC offense on that track?
Yeah, I think it's going to, I mean, look, he was with the number 1 running back in the country, arguably last night, recruiting, right? Mm-hmm. First day on the job, he was down there, or in Northern California, I believe in Stockton, doing a visit. So I think they're going to be really physical up front. And I think that everybody involved with USC football, and again, I go back to the 2.5 months that the leadership had, they all heard, and nobody wanted just to kind of throw the ball and not be physical at the line of scrimmage. You even felt it with Dante Williams. And we need to give him his props, too, of having to do something that was, as challenging as it gets to take over a program in week 2. And you saw him, as the season went on, even shift. Hey, they ran the ball more. I mean, go look at their last game, right? Trying to hand the ball to their back for Brian Malapay, one of his better games. So I think that's going to be the identity, man. I think it's going to be a physical team that's a new age offense.